Thousands of marlin have been caught on lures, live baits, dead baits, but despite many attempts, no one's managed to land one on an ostrich. It's a well-kept secret that Zane Grey was the forerunner of the ostrich method in the early 20th century. Until quite recently, they used all live birds. But in the early 90s, the SPCA announced that submerging the ostriches was no longer acceptable, and attempts at an ostrich scuba suit were quickly abandoned. These days, all the pros are using stuffed ostriches, like Paris here. To perform this week's stunt, I'm going to use the standard ostrich trolling rig, as I sweep around the marlin-rich waters of Dunedin Harbour. As usual, I'll be using my purpose-built vessel. You know I don't want to do this. Let's go. Been at it for 4 minutes now and there's been no action. So it's time for the secret weapon! The Distressed Ostrich soundtrack is a great way to pull in any marlin in the area. It's also great to throw on when the party's over and you just want people to leave. Why do I feel like KFC? Let's try that again. Played him for about an hour there, got off. Probably should have used that hook. I had come so close, but I suppose that elusive world first of a marlin on an ostrich will have to wait for another day. Probably the day after I find another stuffed ostrich on Trade Me. Make sure you tune in next week for highlights of my tuna bowl, when I jumped out of a helicopter into what I thought was a school of feeding tuna, but actually turned out to be a woman's triathlon. Call the cops!